Hello everybody, John Twelve back here again with another video, and today I bring you my official movie review of Mad Max Fury Road. Yes, it's finally here, and I actually saw the movie when it first came out, but I've been, far too delayed to actually sit down and make my movie reviews, so I'm sorry it's been a little late for me to just finally give you my 2 cents on the film, but nonetheless, I'm here to talk about it. Let's just get right down to it. Of course, if you've not seen the film, this review may contain spoilers, so please go check out the movie, then come back, because it's definitely worth the watch. For me personally, I need to make this perfectly clear. I'm not really the biggest Mad Max franchise kind of fan. I mean, like, I watched the franchise back in the day when I was a child, but I never really got into it to the extent that I do movies today. And I tried to give them a chance, like the earlier films, like here and there, over the course of the last, year, if you will, just for preparation of this film. But at the end of the day, it's just like, I don't know, it's just very difficult for me to go back and watch those movies. Now, after watching this one, I don't think you technically need to go back and watch those films, because I watched this film basically not knowing anything or having any kind of prior knowledge of the previous films. I did see them back in the day, but I don't really recall anything that happened in those films, nor do I really know the timeline, so it's very difficult for me to really care. And on top of that, Mad Max Fury Road kind of gives you the basic plot line of what's going on within the 5 seconds of the beginning of this film through narration from Tom Hardy himself, who plays the obviously the main character, Mad Max, who he actually replaces the original actor, Mel Gibson, which I personally think Tom Hardy was an excellent choice to replace Mel Gibson. Obviously, this movie asked for a younger Mad Max. This isn't, taken years after the original franchise, so it wasn't capable of having Mel Gibson play Mad Max again. Granted, would he ever come back, and would it be a good decision to have him come back? Why not? I mean, Mel Gibson, even though he's basically a wackadoo at this point, he's still, a pretty decent he's still a pretty good actor, and I'd definitely see another movie he directed just to see what the heck would go down, but nonetheless, I think Tom Hardy was an excellent replacement, and Tom Hardy kills it in this movie. I mean, and that's saying a lot, seeing as how, if you go back and look at it in retrospect, Tom Hardy probably says, a handful of fucking lines. I want to say that pretty much you can fit all the lines he says over the course of the entire freaking movie in, less than half a paragraph. It's just, that's the extent of what Tom Hardy says, but what Tom Hardy accomplishes through action just says it all. I mean, that's pretty much the extent of his character. He's so fucking badass. Tom Hardy is a badass in general. I love Tom Hardy in kick-ass roles like this, and he definitely kicked ass in this fucking role. And of course, you have other characters being played by actors and actresses like Charlize Theron and Nicholas Hoult, and so on and so forth. And of course, the main villain, played by Hughes Kreese Byrne, who actually, if I'm not mistaken, played a prior villain in the original Mad Max film, who plays the main villain for this film, Immortan Joe, who I thought was a pretty interesting, visually, was a very, very interesting looking kind of villain. And when you get down to the actions of the character, he was definitely a dominant force to be reckoned with. If I had to nitpick his villainous kind of role on this picture, the only thing I can say as a negative nitpick is that overall the movie's predicated on the fact that they're on the Fury Road. They're basically on this long, intense car chase. The basic movie is a car chase. That's the extent. It's basically Fast and the Furious, except on steroids in the post-apocalyptic universe. That's exactly what it is. So it's essentially just one giant car chase. So it's not like your average action flick where there's various fight sequences and various intense one-liners and what have you. It's just straight up car chases with lots of fucking interesting character designs and awesome atmosphere and visuals. That's kind of the extent of what the film's predicated on. But I think I just would have liked the main character have a villainous fight with the main villain of the picture. That's just me. Nonetheless, that being said, Hugh coming back as the main villain for the Mad Max franchise is not the only kind of return. Of course, it's the main return to the director himself, George Miller, who the main thing that made me interested into watching this film is because of George Miller. Now, of course, George Miller created the Mad Max franchise and what have you, but for those of you comic book fans who don't know, George Miller was actually the original director to direct the first ever live-action Justice League movie. Yes, Warner Brothers had plans back in the day before the DC Cinematic Universe, before Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, before, hell, even the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Yeah, even that far back, George Miller was supposed to direct the first ever live-action Justice League movie, and of course it failed in production. It went through hell, and basically through the writers, feud or whatever, and it just went through the ringer, and because of the success of, Chris Nolan's Dark Knight and various other kind of things, Warner Brothers decided to go a different kind of route, which I personally think they shouldn't have gone, because even though obviously going the Dark Knight trilogy route was the best decision, because obviously Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy was awesome, and now we have, the DC Cinematic Universe as it is now, which is Batman v Superman, which I still am very excited to see, regardless of what other people think. But it just, in the parallel universe, just remember, out there, DC Cinematic Universe came first. And on top of that, in the movies rather, of course they beat Marvel, all the time when it came to TV, obviously because of Smallville. But just in the movies, George Miller was supposed to direct a Justice League movie before the MCU even existed. So just imagine what kind of movies we would have now post that. I mean, granted, it's a coin toss. Maybe it could have worked, maybe it didn't work. We really could never know. But it's just one of those things to just really think about. And I just was interested, based off that fact, to watch this movie, just to get the general gist of, what kind of movie would that have been based off this kind of movie? Granted, these are two completely different franchises. This is a post-apocalyptic, action horror flick. And Justice League is a superhero comic book movie. But they're kind of just the same, I guess, feel, if you will, that I really wanted to get the general gist of. And after watching this film, from looking at it in retrospect, God, it would have been amazing to see George Miller fucking direct a Justice League movie. Hell, I still would do it. I mean, granted, Zack Snyder's gonna direct, majority of the Justice League movies, but is he gonna direct all of them? If George Miller would, come back to try and direct a Justice League movie after seeing this movie, I'd like to see that, or at least a comic book movie in general. Let's just let him direct some form of DC comic book movie. But nonetheless, and also, strangely enough, Hugh, who plays Immortan Joe, the main villain of this film, he was also set to play in George Miller's Justice movie as the original Martian Manhunter. So yeah, basically, Martian Manhunter was going to be played by that actor, which is also very interesting, how that would have been accomplished. But nonetheless, going back into the synopsis of the film itself, essentially, we just get a good monologue through Tom Hardy talking about the distant future that he lives in, and then, of course, he gets captured by these, by this, apocalyptic gang of, white, zombie-esque kind of warriors and what have you, and then gets sent, basically into imprisonment. But then, things happen, Charlize Theron's character, Furiosa, kind of steals this armored war rig that's, has various gasoline, but not only that, it also contains Joe's 5 wives, and who she plans to hopefully free from his imprisonment, from basically raping the shit out of him. So essentially, he's taken that. She's taken that. She's taken all this. She's getting out of the fuck out of this fucking state and heading towards God knows where. And of course, he leads his entire army to try and go capture her. And that's essentially the entire movie. Essentially, I mean, it's basically she steals his shit. She leaves on the fucking Fury Road. They fucking go after her. The entire movie's predicated on one basic long sequence on them trying to capture her. That's kind of the entire film itself. And everything that goes with it is just straight up badass. And also, I've already praised Tom Hardy as a badass as playing Mad Max. But also, Charlize Theron, who plays Furiosa, is also equally a badass. I mean, she kills in this role. I mean, for me personally, as a fan of just, you know, straight up badass actresses, Charlize Theron, it depends on the specific character she plays that really makes me anticipated for her roles, and it also depends on how deep she's willing to go with that character, because I've seen her in the past kill movies playing characters, and she's definitely a very character-driven kind of actress, and she kills it as this character, Furiosa. It's so badass to see her just kill it, and just like, there's this wonderful sequence where when she first meets Mad Max, and they just go at it and just, you know, balls to the wall, just straight up fist fight to each other, and she doesn't even have one, she's missing one arm, and she's kicking Tom Hardy's ass, and it's so fucking badass just to see something like that. And I don't know, I just personally felt like she was a badass, and she definitely, I know there's a lot of people who are kind of against this movie, especially like those really weird male feminist, you know, activists who are like, especially shitting over movies that came out recently. Like, I know they did that to Avengers, and they fucked over Joss Whedon, which I don't know how the hell they got into that, but of course they've been trying to do it with this movie. But if you watch closely to Theron's performance as Furiosa and how badass she is, then I don't know what the heck you're talking about. If you did not like her performance, aside from Tom Hardy's, and you think this movie was shit, I can't help you. I can't. It's just impossible for me to help you. But nonetheless, of course, the movie itself just goes on and on and on about this one sequence on Joe trying to recover his wives from Furiosa, who plans to free them from imprisonment. And of course, you know, Max obviously gets caught in between this whole kind of scenario. He's obviously a prisoner of Joe's, but he's trying to get free so he can go off and do his own thing. But at the same time, he gets so caught in between this, he obviously has to help out Furiosa, try and free these, you know, these young women from imprisonment, from being his freaking wives, and hopefully see a brighter future for them, because he obviously feels sorry, I guess, if you will, about the past friends and companions he's had in the past that have died because of him, I guess. Once again, I'm not the biggest Mad Max franchise fan, so I don't really know what happened in the prior films. Let me know what actually happened in the comment section below. I'll probably just watch them later. I mean, I said it before, I tried to watch them prior to the movie, I couldn't get into it, but after watching this, maybe I'll give it another chance, the franchise. But nonetheless, the movie's just awesome. It's badass, it's visually it basically, when I first saw, like, the first half of the movie, the first thing that came to mind was, like, Grindhouse, and then after I saw more, it felt like this movie basically is an indie film given a big, large budget. I mean, this feels like George Miller was like, he was into the indie mindset again. He became an indie filmmaker, and Warner Brothers was like, here's a fucking shit ton of money. Go fucking make something visually interesting, you son of a bitch. And then he came back and gave us a mad fucking world. That's essentially what he did, and I love that. It just feels like an art house film. It's awesome. It's definitely a refreshing kind of film to watch right after that whole Avengers bug that everyone's on. So if you've seen Avengers and you want to see something that's the complete opposite of it, but equally badass, this is the movie you see. This is the movie that I definitely recommend. It's awesome. I wouldn't be surprised that this movie fucking starts killing, you know, Avengers type shit. I mean, like, it's that fucking good. I mean, granted, maybe not a lot of people will be into it because of its darkness and its craziness, and, you know, and there's a lot of crazy that goes along. I mean, like, you just don't be calling movies called Mad Max for nothing. It's a crazy flick with a lot of crazy shit. So definitely you've been warned, but it's definitely worth the watch. If you're not into the, horror or action or George Miller-esque kind of movies, or even the Mad Max franchise, I think there just will be some things that you can get into, because even though I'm into, like, action, adventure, horror, post-apocalyptic kind of genre movies, I'm not a Mad Max fan. I said this prior, I'm not into the franchise, but even I love this movie, and I personally would put it up against the Avengers this year. It's fucking that good. So I definitely recommend everyone else out there to watch it. At the end of the day, I give it a good 9 out of 10. It was so freaking epic and awesome. It was visually pleasing. The music, Junkie XL, who is actually end up going to doing the score for Batman and Batman v Superman, and also helping out Hans Zimmer. After listening to his score in this movie, I can't wait to see, Batman v Superman. I mean, just hearing the music, the soundtrack, I can't wait to get that shit. It was so awesome. I'm just listening to the soundtrack, and I'm like, oh god, imagine Batman kicking ass, just slaying ass to this music. Shit, that's gonna be awesome. So yeah, the music was awesome, cinematography was awesome, the visuals, the production, the atmosphere, the feel, the performances from Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron, direction from George Miller, everything that went into this film was just awesome, badass, epicness. Everyone else did an amazing job. Zoe Kravitz, Hugh Byrne, Nicholas Hoult. Everyone else that was in this movie that you wouldn't personally think would do a good job, killed it. They just straight up killed it. Personally, I would love to see another Mad Max movie with these characters, specifically Tom Hardy as Mad Max, which might, and Charlize Theron as Furiosa, which might actually happen, because if I'm not mistaken, George Miller stated prior to the release of this film that there are plans to do a sequel, and there are plans to kind of spin off Furiosa as her own character. And if I'm not mistaken, also, Tom Hardy is scheduled to perform as Mad Max for future movies for Warner Brothers. So after seeing this movie, I'm definitely interested to see another Mad Max movie with Tom Hardy and Charlize Theron. So definitely let me know what you personally thought about this film in the comments below. Did you love Mad Max Fury Road as much as I did? Are you a fan of the Mad Max franchise? And how did this movie fare up against those films? What are your personal thoughts on Tom Hardy replacing Mel Gibson? What are your personal thoughts on Charlize Theron as a main character? Did you think she was not feminist enough for all the male activists out there? Let me know in the comment section below. I personally thought she was badass. What did you think about the main villain, Joe, and his visual look? I personally thought he looked awesome. He talked badass. I just think he should have had at least one sequence of slaying ass. I just would have liked that. I mean, I'm just saying, a character that looks like that, you have to see him punch the shit out of someone, and we did not get that, which is kind of depressing. But at the end of the day, he still looked fucking awesome. So, and Tom Hardy, what else can you say? Comment below, let me know what you personally thought. Subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. Hope you guys enjoyed. This has been John 12.